The following is a Papi Chulo Radio original program. The views and opinions expressed in the commentaries and/or interviews in the following program are solely those of the individuals and are not views of Papi Chulo Radio, its parent, affiliate, or subsidiary companies.
The Avengers Initiative, WandaVision.
Welcome to the Avengers Initiative, WandaVision, a PapiChuloRadio.com original series. Papi Chulo Radio, celebrating a decade of podcasting excellence. Today is Monday, February 8th, 2021, and I'm your host, Jeffrey Aruz. During this podcast, we'll be having an in-depth discussion on Disney Plus's WandaVision. Please welcome my co-hosts, Priscilla Rocha.
Hey, everybody.
And Professor X.
You didn't see that coming?
No, I don't think anybody did. We'll be talking about that and so much more. So let's jump into our discussion of Season 1, Episode 5, which was titled, On a Very Special Episode, ... and debuted February 5th, 2021 via Disney+. Here's the official synopsis of the episode. Wanda addresses Vision's worries when he grows suspicious of the neighbor's strange behavior. Dun dun dun. Okay, before we get into the actual show, let's talk about the theme, as we have in the past. So this one is the 80s installment of WandaVision. Are we fans of 80s family situation comedies? Question mark. And it sounds like Priscilla's about to say something.
I was about to say I didn't really watch Family Ties. I watched other 80s series, but that's what this one seemed most based off of. But man, I freaking loved Little Vision. He made me crack up so much. The little baby.
Yeah.
A part of me asked the stupid question in my head. I was like, did they paint a baby for this moment? And I was like, no,
did they paint
Photoshop,
the baby
but still,
for this moment?
no, but think that was so perfect. I loved it. I loved the little man in a beret showing off his little equations and stuff like that. I just loved everything about it. It was perfect.
That was fantastic. That was like an 80s motif for theme songs. Like they would show baby pictures and stuff of the cast. So it was very, very 80s. I don't think I've ever seen an episode of Family Ties, now that I'm thinking about it.
Good Lord, what's wrong with you people?
I know, right? But, I watched Full House, I watched Growing Pains, A Cosby Show. Like, I've seen 80s family comedies, sitcoms, but I've never seen Family Ties. Apparently The House was very Family Ties. The theme song was very just 80s sitcoms. Like, that was basically the type of music and the duets and that sort of thing that you would get with 80s family sitcoms. There were little homages to Full House in the theme song. Just, them sort of like running to the camera and them having the picnic. That was clearly an homage to Full House. We did not get a "You Got It, Dude," but I guess that was enough. My heart broke. But
You didn't get it, dude.
I did not get it, dude. The theme song also reminded me, it's just everything 80s was in that theme song, and it made it spectacular. Professor, since apparently you are the only one here that has seen Family Ties, give it to me. What did you think of the family tiesiness of it all?
I'm surrounded by Philistines and children. Family
Yes.
Ties was one of the great shows of the 80s. It was spectacular. It gave us Michael J. Fox, if nothing else.
Well, yes.
No, that was a show that, honestly, I watched that with my family every week. regularly. It was, one of those family viewing things. It was a great, great show. Brilliantly done. And so I really appreciated it. The opening of it with the family ties, the painting of it, that was something that was clearly that. The pictures of them as they're growing up. The really long theme song, which was very much an 80s thing. Just a little shout out to the composers, who every episode have been coming up, well, with the exception of last week's episode, have been coming up with a different theme song appropriate that sounds like a 50s, a 60s, a 70s, an 80s theme. It's the husband-wife team behind Frozen who wrote all of the themes. I don't know if they sang it or who sang it. I didn't think to check that out, but it really felt very 80s, like that very long, slow, unlike nowadays where it's like, a 15-second blurb and you're into the show. So we've got more time for commercials. But no, it felt very, very real, especially to family ties. One thing that did strike me about it, though, is because this is the first time I've been watching the show, and it's so clearly it's family ties, like the decoration, the stained glass in the background, everything like that. But something that struck me for the first time watching it is that even though they're sort of mimicking these styles, the basic structure of the house never changes. The door is always on the one side. The stairs are always directly opposite. The kitchen is always on the opposite side. The only reason I noticed that is that Family Ties was opposite to that. Family Ties, the kitchen would have been on the left-hand side. The front door would have been on the right-hand side. So it feels to me like, and not to get too far ahead of ourselves, I think that, by the end of the series, we're going to see Wanda in a house that looks nothing like we've seen before, but has exactly the floor plan that we've seen in every version of their house.
Very interesting. I love that keen eye and that wonderful eye of observation that we have with the professor. I don't think you needed to freeze frame that to notice it, but I'm glad that you've been keeping an eye on the.
Well, it just struck me because, as I say, I watch Family Ties all the time, and so I was watching it thinking, well, wait, the kitchen's on the wrong side. Why is that? And then I realized, wait a second, the kitchen has always been in exactly the same location. And the door's always been in exactly, and they've changed it's not like they're saving money by not rebuilding because they changed the height, they put risers in and stuff like that. They're willing to do that, but I think there's a reason why the basic structure stays the same.
I like it. I'm here for it. Okay, so we are going to be going kind of in order because I do want to save that reveal for the end because I know that's just going to open a can of worms of pure speculation on what the hell is going on. So let's start off with the first big thing that happened. Should we take that from the top? Let's talk about it. Agnes. All Agnes. What the hell was this? What happened? What's going on? I kept on looking at everybody's facial expressions. I rewound that one. I mean, I'll be real. I've seen the episode like 5 times. So, I did rewind though, and I kept on looking at everyone's facial expressions. I wanted to notice the moment Agnes broke. And then I wanted to see Wanda's reaction to it. I listened to the sounds, the sitcominess disappeared, and there was a silence when it happened. What happened here? Priscilla, what'd you think?
Man, I was so confused when it happened. A part of me was like, what? I didn't understand what was going on. I was like, she broke, but why? A part of me didn't understand why it wasn't fitting the cadence of the show anymore.
She did break, big time, and it was Vision's fault. Because Vision kept on interjecting that he, maybe she shouldn't, he kept on saying, are you sure? No, maybe not. Does she have to hold the baby? He kept on interjecting, and it threw her off. The sitcom-y balance, the sitcom-y pitter-patter of the cadence of what they were saying, it just threw her off. And that helped her break. Professor, Agnes.
Well, first of all, this is the episode where we really see why they cast Catherine Hahn to play Agnes. She is just, she's devouring the scenery. She is spectacular. She's great. Catherine Hahn is a goddamn national treasure, and I'll fight anyone who says otherwise. Regarding that particular scene, I think there's a couple of possible interpretations. One is that Agnes has become aware. She's no longer completely under control. She's no longer sort of an NPC. She has agency. She knows what's going on. So from her point of view, I think, you could see this as she knew that what Wanda wanted was for her to take care of the kids. And when Vision stepped up and said, well, maybe you shouldn't, it's like he was interfering with Wanda's plan. And Agnes, because she's playing along with Wanda's plan, is basically saying, well, look, you're the person in control of this. What do you want us to do here? The other possibility is that Agnes is manipulating the situation because, it did get her close to the twins. And Agnes was present with the twins both times that something very significant happened to them. I also think it was kind of interesting that Wanda's hex powers don't work on the kids. Last episode, or 2 episodes ago, I guess, when the stork was there and her hex powers didn't work on the stork, we sort of, laughed it off as just sort of a sitcom trope because the laughter was there, indicating that, oh, this is just a funny little moment. But it does suggest there's stuff going on in this world that Wanda can't control, or that Wanda isn't in control of, which is interesting given what we thought we knew at the end of last episode. So I do think this was quite significant. And yeah, I mean, I just don't really know because, Catherine Hahn is playing it so sitcom tropey, over the top neighbor who just bursts in without knocking on the door and, all of that. But there is definitely, when she broke, it was so different. And, there was no glimmer of recognition on Wanda's face, no sense that she understood what was going on or anything like that. It almost seemed like Agnes was reading the script and no one else had. It was really interesting. And of course, it also gives us more of the opportunity to see Vision sort of breaking through to the fact that reality is not what he thinks it is. So I thought it was a very, very strong scene to open it up with and just give us that really unsettling. And something you mentioned is that they had the sitcom-y, the music and the laugh track and all that. And just when it suddenly vanished, that was so creepy. Like to just have them standing there like actors on a stage, not knowing what's going on. Boy, I found that really, really unsettling. And, and again, I'm, full praise to Catherine Hahn, but honestly, Elizabeth Olsen and Paul Bettany both played that scene very, very well as well. It really gave you a sense of creepiness and malice very early on, which of course, quickly, and once, everyone's back into it and, the kids are quiet and everything like that. And yeah, boy, it was really an interesting way to start the episode.
Yes. Yeah, that silence was deafening. It's just everything disappeared. The sitcom soundtrack, the music, the laugh track, and the babies crying. And then all of a sudden, it just roared back into the scene with Agnes laughing and getting back into the part. Elizabeth Olsen was fascinating in that scene. I mean, Agnes was wonderful just because she's fantastic, and seeing her confusion when she broke, as far as like, what is exactly that you want me to do, because I thought I was supposed to do this, that was amazing. But the fact that Wanda didn't break at all, and we've seen Wanda break in essence, and because she's taken control of the scene, she's rewounded parts, she said no, she's she's done stuff to break a bit, and she does, well, she breaks later on. Maybe someone would say she broke bad. But she does break at moments. So it was very interesting that she didn't break at that time. She really committed to the sitcominess. Like, you could, yeah, there's a part of me, even when she's like, Vision, like, we want Agnes to, look at the babies, right? Like, that was still kind of sitcom-y. She didn't fully break for that either. So it was interesting, the choice of like not having Wanda break. All right, so I want to continue on with Agnes. So we're going to go in order with Agnes. I know that it hits on many other storylines, but we will be talking about Vision and his journey separately, and Wanda and what she was up to separately as well. So focusing on Agnes, because a lot of people have these theories on Agnes. And I was reading people sort of justifying that scene so that to show us that Agnes, in essence, was in deference to Wanda. So in essence, Wanda is in charge, and Wanda's the big bad. There were some people that were using that scene to justify that. Oh no, Agnes really is in charge, and she's the big bad. And I don't know. It's funny just after the episode comes out, going online and reading the comment section, because people and their theories. I mean, it's fascinating, the type of conversation that WandaVision is bringing into the pop culture arena. So Agnes is featured, well, she's sprinkled throughout the episode. And some of what the professor said, like her awareness and that sort of thing, is in full effect in this episode, because the twins age up not once, but twice, and both of the times was in front of Agnes. And as Wanda says to Vision at one point, she didn't even, the twins age up in front of her, and she didn't even really even react. So there was that. Later on in the episode, she's involved well, they end up getting a dog, and the dog dies, and she's involved in that. And she's there to witness Wanda basically, the kids begging Wanda to bring the dog back to life, and Wanda is basically like, I can't do that, and Agnes is there basically saying, you can do that? So there are moments where she is fully sitcom. I would say for the majority of the episode, she is kind of sitcom-y, but there are, like, the camera flashes to her, as the professor has said in the past. There are times when the camera flashes at her, or she has a little aside, she says a little sitcom-y jab, but it seems like there's another meaning to it if you think of Agnes as a truly aware character. Professor, talk to me a little bit more about Agnes throughout the episode and what you noticed with her.
Well, yeah, as we mentioned, she was there each time the twins got older. And the first time, it was the joke if she didn't even notice. The second time, though, she saw them get older and actually made a joke about making sure the dog didn't get any bigger in the same way. So again, Agnes is clearly more aware than we would think, and than we've seen from other characters in the past. And we did get hints of that a couple of episodes ago, where she was, talking to the neighbor, and there's that sense that there is some awareness there. What you were talking about, the reaction shots. There was one that, on second viewing of it, that struck me as significant, where the twins are basically saying to Wanda, "You can bring back the dead," or words to that effect. And she has that, very special sitcom moment of, no, there some things are done, and we can't undo them. We simply have to accept it and go on. And there's this brief moment, a shot of Agnes sort of looking up to the sky and almost heaving a sigh of relief. It's like, okay, she hasn't. And again, if you're going to make the argument that Agnes is a benevolent force who's there trying to help Wanda out, that would be her sense of, oh, thank God she hasn't gone that far yet. And again, we could just be reading far too much into this. It was just, one brief moment of reaction. I have seen, various people online suggesting that, Agnes actually killed the dog, in order to try to spark something. But I think, the fact that she was there and spent so much time with them, and in such a different way. We've known from the beginning that Catherine Hahn was going to be, something more than just one of the people in the community. But in this episode, boy, but you can absolutely see it both ways. I mean, she could be a benevolent force. She could be a malign force. You just don't know. And just to throw out another possibility, what if the twins are doing something?
Okay.
Like, what if they're trying to push her, the Scarlet Witch, into doing more? What if the whole point of this is to push her to exert more power to, and then maybe someone is skimming off the top or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Oh, we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about power in a moment. Priscilla, what about you? What's your take on Agnes throughout the episode? Did you notice anything interesting with her as we have?
I figured the same kind of logic that Professor X did, where she seemed like she was orchestrating the events to occur. Like, she was like, kids can't live without them, and she sprayed the babies and then they grew up, like, making me think that maybe the spray had something in it.
Oh,
and then
Lord. I love it.
like, I don't know. And then she had the dog, and then the dog conveniently died in her yard. And she's like, you can bring them back to life. Like, she's pushing Wanda to use her powers, and she's pushing the kids to use their powers to age up, to grow up, to be more. And I don't know why she's doing that. If a malevolent force is using her to push Wanda and the kids further along. I don't
Mm-hmm.
necessarily think the kids are evil, but I
Oh,
do
okay. Oh,
think that
thank the heavens.
I do think that she's being used.
Okay. All right. So this is a change, a little tweak from what you've been saying.
Hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. I love the evolution of a theory. I love it. Okay. Good grief. I'm like, where should we go? Where should we go next? Where should we go next? Where should we go next? Because like so much happened in this episode. This was a little bit of a longer episode than we're used to. I think we actually got about 30 minutes, if not a teeny tiny bit over 30 minutes of footage, which is awesome. I think it was like 30, maybe 5 minutes of actual footage. Okay, so, well, let's talk about Vision. He had 20/20 vision in this one. Vision was noticing a lot. And we've seen Vision noticing stuff, but we've seen Wanda have really good control over Vision. You know, whether it's rewinding the tape, doing a quick splice, you know, a hard cut, influencing him, you know, from, you know, having a face of worry to the sitcom-y veneers. But this one really had Vision frazzled. Like he was noticing everything. He questioned what happened with Agnes at the start of the episode when she broke. He was like, what happened? And Wanda didn't break at all. She was in her sitcominess, you know, trying to do her best to convince him that everything was okay. Vision was well, this might be a separate thing that we can discuss, but I'll mention it. Vision was noticing that Wanda was very brazen with her powers, which is something that has been a trope in the WandaVision sitcom. The fact that they're hiding their powers from their neighbors. And Wanda even tells Vision, like, do we really need to? Like, do we need to do that anymore? Like, can't you can be you, you know, let's just be us in essence. And Vision's like, that's not what we have been about, in essence. And then the big moment in the episode. Whether it's like two big moments in one. Number one, the email or the electronic mail correspondence. And then the coworker, Norm. What the hell was this? I mean, it was an enlightening moment for Vision that inspires what happens later on. But Vision was starting not necessarily to put the puzzle pieces together. Vision was finding puzzle pieces, and he has no idea what the puzzle is. So he has no idea how to put them together. But he was finding these puzzle pieces. He just has no idea what it is. The Maximoff anomaly. Could be. Priscilla, talk to me about Vision. Talk to me about Vision within the opening, questioning Wanda, and then everything at the office.
Maybe it's because I'm the viewer, but I feel like he doesn't have 20/20 vision. I feel like he needs glasses or something because,
I know,
my
right?
God, man, you have all the puzzle pieces right there in front of you. Why haven't you put the pieces together and figured this shit out? Like, that email should have, like, given you a huge clue. The scared man should have given you the huge clue. Like, both of those pieces together should tell you that your wife is lying to you, that something is wrong with this world, and that like, even you should know for sure that, like, if you think back to your past, you can't really look back to a past beyond this town. And shouldn't that give you a moment to pause and think something's off about this town? Like, I don't know. All of this together should tell him that there's bad juju, but he's not putting the pieces together, and it's frustrating the hell out of me. And I don't know, I don't know why he isn't. It's because he wants to play like the good husband. I don't know, like, why? A good husband would know to do better for his wife by surveying all of what he sees and doing what's best for his wife in that sense too. But he's not doing that. He prefers to just be in the dark.
Okay, that's an interesting take on it. Professor, what about you? Your thoughts on Vision, and the Office sequence in particular, and also, what do you think of the small little point that I made about Vision noticing that Wanda has become very carefree about her powers in front of their neighbors?
Yeah, that was quite interesting. I think, there's a couple of possible interpretations of that. One is that, Wanda is being manipulated by someone, and someone wants her to be using her powers more, which leads back to that idea that if there is some malign force out there that is trying to skim off the top, it might make sense. It also might indicate that she's just becoming more desperate. She's, no longer as concerned with keeping up appearances. She's Breaking Bad, if you will. And again, I think either interpretation is interesting. I found the scene in the office really interesting. How did they get that email is an obvious question. How did that email just find its way into the reality? Because it shouldn't have. Who sent it? And how did whoever sent it get it into, the Maximoff, the hex, let's just call it the hex. Mm-hmm. Because apparently that's a thing now. Also kind of interesting, I think it's kind of pointed that when Norm was shocked back to reality, he had that, immediate realization that he had been under control, that it was causing pain. But he doesn't say Wanda was causing it. He says she's doing it.
Yes.
He only says she. And that could be, because we're all sort of, after Monica said it's Wanda, it's all Wanda. It does lead one to think maybe the logical, simple assumption is that it's Wanda, but, it's an MCU show. So it could be a little more than that. Although it was interesting that, when they do flash out talking to Monica, she's describing basically the same situation. She does say Wanda was responsible for it and, says, the overwhelming reason is grief. And the whole series is about grief, trying to deal with loss in various ways. And, grief can cause people to behave in uncharacteristic ways. And, maybe it has pushed Wanda over the edge. So I do think it's interesting. I agree that Vision has a lot of the pieces, but we're seeing it from a different perspective. It's like he's trying to put the pieces together and all he sees is the back of the puzzle. We're seeing the front of the puzzle. So we're seeing how we think the pieces should go together. And obviously, he did have the realization after Norm that something was going on because, he came home and confronted Wanda about it. So I think he is making that realization. And again, and something that he said to Wanda is, how could he know that? He said, you can't, your powers don't work on me or something like that. Because, in the past they have. So it seems that just like, Agnes, Vision is gaining more agency. Vision is gaining, how do I phrase this? More of his sense of self as the series goes on, and they're not just resetting. And we saw that. We've talked. Paul Bettany's done a very good job of doing those little micro signs showing Vision's unease at various things that we've seen earlier in the series. And I think this is just sort of giving us a very slow reveal of his doubts, and building up to we'll probably mention them actually having a face-off over it. So I do think they're doing a very good job of Vision putting together, the questions about that. And also him realizing that he has no memories of life before Westdale. So, how did they get here? It's a very interesting situation for him to be in. Because as I say, he jumped to the conclusion that, the she must be the Scarlet Witch, which is obviously the simplest explanation. But I do think there's the possibility there's something else out there.
I do agree with you on that. May I also just say, because no one mentioned it, the creepiness of everybody at the office reading the email at the exact same time in a very monotone voice.
And laughing.
Spectacular. Yes, and then laughing at it because I guess it was oh, it's a joke, right? I was like, oh,
Well, part of
God.
that is
Hmm.
the something that, people have said, if you go back and you watch those, sitcoms of the time weren't about joke reaction. Joke reaction was more about the rhythm of it and then pause for a laughter of recognition. The scene with the twins and Sparky in the sink was sort of an example that the kids were saying things that were not funny at all, but were getting the laugh breaks from the sitcom audience, which was interesting. Funnily enough, though, I don't remember if it was Tommy or Billy, actually had one good joke and it didn't get a laugh, which was, when Wanda says, waiter, what is this dog doing in my sink? Tommy or Billy says the dog paddle, and it doesn't get any reaction. There was no laugh from the audience at that point. But that was actually a pretty good joke for a little kid to make.
Oh, look at that. I want to give props at this point, especially because of that office scene, to just all the actors, period. Because we've been sort of like keeping praise on Elizabeth Olsen, Paul Bettany, Catherine Hahn, and our people on the outside of the Hex. But I want to give props to the everyday people in Westview because Norm played the fuck out of that for me. The way that he switched into his actual self versus his sitcom self was really, really good. You could tell that he was freaked the fuck out about what was going on, and you could tell that he was in essence trapped. And that was his moment of escape. I really loved it. It was so good and it added to the creep factor of that scene. So let's jump out of the Hex and let's talk about everything that's going on outside of Westview. And the first thing that I want to talk about three things with Monica. And they're actually three different questions. So whomever I pick first, which will probably be Priscilla, I just want to get your take on whichever question you want to answer. So the first thing is they're doing all this testing on Monica, and the results are like empty. Like there's nothing in the scan. Nada. Zilch. Apparently something was going on with the blood work as well. Some people online have a huge theory about something. So my question is, what the hell is going on with that? Number two, we had an entire breakdown of Avengers Endgame, where everyone is giving their 2 cents on, oh, well, Wanda, could have taken out Thanos, but she was interrupted, and then, oh, but then Captain Marvel came in, this, that, and the other. I just thought it was interesting that they were talking about the movie, kind of like as if they had watched the movie, which I'm sure they, satellites, they probably have seen visuals of it, so that doesn't surprise me, but just a question about that, like, what'd you think about that little moment? And the third thing that involves that moment, there was a clear look that Monica gave. Well, let's put that as a B question with the whole Avengers Endgame thing. There was a look that she gave about Captain Marvel. We're not going to talk about her. So there was that, and I guess this would be the fourth question. And what was it? An aerospace engineer? What was that? Who she asked about? Or I know an engineer. I'm gonna text them right now, and then she gets interrupted. There are a lot of people theorizing on like who the engineer is. I don't know if we want to add in our own little speculation about that. So I gave you a cornucopia of questions, Priscilla. You can pick and choose which one you want to answer, and then I'm sure the professor will answer the rest. So go ahead, Priscilla.
Okay, as for the flashes of light that are seen on the x-rays, it's totally that she's changing into photon, that she's getting her powers to that and she got her powers the same way that Wanda got her powers, experimentation with the stone. And that's where I'm using my like Wanda is a stone, or that she has the powers of the stones, the Infinity Stones.
Ooh.
And that's how she gave her powers to be the next photon. Well, not the
Ooh.
next, like the first photon, but yes, that's what I think it is. And as for the second question about what was the second question?
It was just the whole end game discussion, them knowing stuff, her, we are not talking about her.
Oh, I loved the endgame discussion. I thought that was super funny as hell. And I noticed right away when she's like, oh, we're not talking about her. And I'm like, is it because you don't, like, is it because she's really close to your family and you don't like people talking about her? Or is it because you're upset because she wasn't there for your mom when she died and you think she could have done something about it? And that's what I think it is, that Captain Marvel wasn't there when the blip happened and her mom died, and she thinks that something could have been done to prevent it that Captain Marvel didn't do.
I can dig it. I like that theory. I'm sure it's angst and stuff that will be handled in Captain Marvel too, so I don't think we're going to get resolution to that. But I do like that theory. Professor, what about you? Do you co-sign anything that Priscilla has said? The one that Priscilla didn't address, which she might have left for you, is a certain engineer that that Monica was going to text.
Yeah, for me, I think I noticed the Captain Marvel reference as well. I did think it was a little weird that they had Monica be the one to say that Scarlet Witch almost took down Thanos, because remember, she's only been blipped back for less than 2 weeks of her subjective time. So, I mean, how much time did she have to study the details of what happened in that versus everything else that happened in the last 5 years? I think it might have been better if Darcy and Jimmy were having that debate. But when she looked away, when she said Captain Marvel, I would come up with a slightly less fraught explanation, which is simply that, how did the movie Captain Marvel end? Captain Marvel flew away, leaving Lieutenant Trouble behind, and maybe never came back. So it might just be the child who hasn't seen her beloved aunt in all these years, and when she did come back, as Priscilla said, she couldn't save her mom. But I also agree with Priscilla that yes, she's becoming Photon. I think the fact that they keep flashing back to that picture of Maria Rambeau, and with her code name in there, Photon, and the fact that as we've said, this whole series is about grief and dealing with grief. Right? She's having to grieve over her mother, and she really hasn't had time to grieve. She's just come back and immediately went back to work. She hasn't really dealt with that or gone through that in any way. So I agree that she's going to become Photon, and it'll be interesting. Perhaps going through the field or being expelled through the field gives anyone superpowers. So maybe if Wanda were to expand the Maximoff anomaly across the world, she would create a whole bunch of superpowered people who might be considered mutants. Who knows? I'm just speculating at this point. As for the aerospace engineer, a lot of speculation online. Most are saying probably Reed Richards. And again, the level of detail that people get into is that apparently if you're looking at the Spanish language subtitles, they use the female form of engineer.
Yes.
So they're saying, oh, it's a woman. So is it Riri Williams? But technically Riri was never an aerospace engineer. I'm not sure Reed Richards was either.
Was Sue?
But it could be get Reed Richards and the Fantastic Four into location and they could get blasted in the same way and, develop powers. So, I mean, this could be seen as, a way to introduce a lot of powered characters into the Marvel universe. We've talked before about the House of M comic book, which, obviously there's a certain level of similarity to this. In the House of M comics, there was, Wanda was being manipulated by her brother and her father Magneto to basically rewrite the entire world's reality. And there were a few people who remembered the way it was before and would go around awakening people in the same way that Vision did with Norm in this episode. But the end of the House of M was that Wanda came to realize that, all of her problems and all the trouble had been caused by her being manipulated by mutants. So she just said at the end of it, no more mutants. And, basically took powers away from, tens of thousands of mutants around the world. What if she did something the reverse of it at the end of this? What if she decided the solution was that we need more people with powers, that we need to not have it, a limited thing that only a handful of people have? What if it should be more democratized, shared more evenly? And what if instead of doing no more mutants, she just basically expands the anomaly and triggers essentially mutations in all these people? That could be. I don't know if they would do that. That's such a universe changing, almost shattering type thing that I don't know if they would go that far. But if they are looking for a way to introduce characters from other franchises, that would be a way to do it.
Yeah, I mean, we don't know yet.
No, comma, more mutants.
I know, exactly.
Yes. No.
Perfect.
Punctuation, it's so important.
Exactly. Yeah, because it's like, we don't know what they're going to do, clearly. But, like, would they do something like that on a Disney Plus series? Because that would, and they've already talked about how this series, in essence, is setting up, in some sort of way, for at least Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, and potentially as well Spider-Man number 3, which is going to be doing multiverse type of stuff, and maybe even tangentially, potentially, Loki, the series, question mark. So something has to happen that's going to be big. I mean, dare I say Big Lee, something has to happen, I would think. But would they do that, though, from this series? Like, my hope has always been that they would kind of slowly introduce mutants, but there has to be some sort of, in essence, cataclysmic event that would all of a sudden show us mutants, because I don't think they're going to go the route of they've always been here, they've just been hiding. A lot of people have been thinking, are they going to somehow rewrite Wanda's backstory, instead of necessarily the stone being the thing that sparked her powers, maybe the stones fully awakened her powers or something like that. I mean, I don't know if that's what they're going to do. That's just what people have been talking about online. If they are going to start using the M word, I guess we're going to have to wait and see what happens. But I
think there's definitely a possibility for that, because if you go back to the end of Captain America: The Winter Soldier, where we are first introduced to Wanda and Pietro, they said that, out of all the test subjects, these are the only 2 that survived. So maybe they had a mutation that was just unlocked by exposure. And as I'm saying now, if Wanda were to expand this field, it might unlock these mutations that are lying dormant in all these people. And so she wouldn't necessarily be causing it. She would just be enabling this power and as a way of introducing, if you want, mutants to the MCU.
That is true. I mean, all it takes is for a second for that field just to expand around the entire globe, and then it can sort of disappear into the air, and that's all that it would take, if we're being fully honest. I did read the theories about the Richards. I don't know if her name is Sue Storm, right? Mrs.
Yes.
Okay.
Sue Storm.
Is she an engineer?
They have Sue has been problematic for the Marvel Universe since she was introduced, because she was basically brought on as blonde eye candy in the original Fantastic Four, and her power was just to turn invisible. And they sort of come to realize that, this is really sexist AF. So over time, they've expanded her powers and abilities. She's now certainly the strongest of the Fantastic Four, because she also has, force fields, and she can do all sorts of cool things with her force fields. I think in one of the movies, they presented her as a scientist, but I don't think that's comic book canon. But then again, hey, they're creating something new. They can do whatever they want with it. And it would certainly make more sense, and again, when they're trying to deal with that, the idea behind it was that, when Reed took the ship up and they got hit by cosmic rays and it gave them their powers, she and Johnny were just tagging along with them because that's what you do when you're launching an incredibly dangerous experimental spaceship. And they sort of tried to get around that by making Sue a scientist and Johnny a test pilot and stuff like that. So it kind of makes more sense from a contemporary point of view. But yeah, I'm not aware of anything that has ever suggested that Sue is actually like an engineer of any sort.
Okay. So my hope with at least the Fantastic Four, because I believe any type of movie with them would be many years down the line, is my hope is that they sprinkle them in to whatever film might need someone of their expertise, so that we start to get to know them maybe even before they get powers. Sort of like what they've done with the smaller characters in the MCU, kind of like Jimmy Woo and Darcy. We see them in one movie, hear about them mentioned in another, then all of a sudden it's their movie. I think that might be kind of interesting. Although I am not running Marvel at all, so they can do whatever the hell they want because we will be sitting here talking about it. Period. Okay, let's see. Let's talk about this man. Because he was introduced, Mr. Sword acting director Tyler Hayward. He was introduced in essence as someone that knew Monica. So I think, for a brief moment, maybe I was suckered in. I was like, okay, they have a relationship, not that kind of relationship, but they know each other. They're friendly. He knew her mom, this, that, or the other. Like, he's going to be an ally. And then he turned into the complete opposite of that in this episode. Very dismissive of Jimmy, painting Wanda with the huge brushstroke of being a terrorist, although he did have the visuals to maybe prove his point. What do we think is going on with director Hayward? There are a lot of theories online. Some people are saying he's a Skrull. I don't really know if I'm going to label him a Skrull. But do we think he's supposed to be sort of, is Sword going to be a bit of an antagonist to our heroes maybe moving forward? And that's why they're setting him up as someone that's clashing with clearly people that we're supposed to be rooting for? I'll open that up to the floor. It's just a general question.
Well, first off, could we please have a middle-aged white guy who's not the baddie? Representation matters, people.
Oh, God.
Honestly, when we first met him, I thought, I don't trust him for some reason. But I honestly thought, well, that seems refreshing that he's getting along well with Monica. He seems to have gotten along well with her mother. Maybe it's not going to be the obvious middle-aged white guy bureaucrat who's going to be the baddie. And then in this episode, he was the baddie. Not the big baddie. And I think they're doing actually, kind of a good job in that, most of what he did in this episode was kind of justified. If he does see her as a terrorist threat, and she is clearly quite dangerous, I think you can make an argument that Nick Fury probably would have done the same thing. But yeah, he's clearly being cast, if not a bad guy, certainly as an antagonist to the heroes. Whether you want to think of the heroes as Wanda's side of things or the heroes as our characters on the outside. One thing that I did find was kind of interesting was, we speculated, last time that, Wanda had grabbed Vision's body and gone off with it. And then that was when everything started settling up. For him to have sat on the fact that, the Scarlet Witch has stolen the Vision's body, and disappeared with it, up until now, 9 days later, seems to, and he says he's gotten permission, so maybe it wasn't him being as sketchy as it seems. But I think it is somewhat sketchy that, because he invokes, Vision's living will that he didn't want to be turned into a weapon. Great. Why exactly were you guys at Sword taking him apart and studying him then? Because It's not like he was just sitting in a coffin. There were scientists actually working on the parts. So I'm a little bit suspicious of what he and Sword were up to in that case.
Yes. You hit the right points. You hit the nail on the head. This is something that I'm going to be asking Priscilla about as well, because I found it... Listen, I was rooting for Sword for a moment because our girl is there. It looks like, based off of what we were told, it seems as if Maria Rambeau started Sword. So in my mind, Sword must be good. Kind of like Shield. You know, Shield was started by Peggy, and it was in essence a force for good as well. And then they had the Vision's body, and that was hella sus. Like, for me, that was just too kind of sketchy and weird, because they clearly had, it had appeared as if they had dissected him and they were studying him. And I know that they read a whole bunch of, like, the Sokovia Accords, and that's against this, and the Living Will, and they were justifying whatever. It was still hella weird, and it made me kind of give the squinty eye to Sword and wonder what they were doing, and are they more so mad that Wanda thwarted whatever they were going to do? You know, it just, yeah, that gave me pause big time when it came to Sword, because I was like, that does not really seem on the up and up. It doesn't seem kosher. Priscilla, what about you? What did you think of, in particular, the fact that Sword had Vision's body, and they were clearly doing something when Wanda went to reclaim his body? And why did Sword have it? That's another question. Why wouldn't the Avengers have had it?
Well, if you think about it, like, how many Avengers are left? Like,
Oh, God.
it's really just the Hulk and Spider-Man, and what the hell is Spider-Man gonna do? He's a kid, and the Hulk is
Doctor
there
Strange is
sometimes, and
there.
sometimes not.
How
Huh?
dare you? How dare you insult Doctor Strange?
Doctor Strange isn't an Avenger. He's there sometimes, and sometimes he's not. Like,
Yeah.
he's got other stuff to do.
He's got appointments to keep.
Exactly.
I'm more bothered by the fact they weren't recycling. Shouldn't they have, hauled Vision's body out to the curb in a blue bin and just, gotten all that lovely vibranium back?
Yes, that's what it is.
I'm thinking they should have, like, melted him down or something, like a Terminator. I don't know.
Not like a Terminator.
I don't know. It's weird to me that you took something that's supposed to be like a body and you desecrated it by dissecting it and like working on it and trying to figure out its motives and its moves while it's dead. Like, that's completely against the guy's living will, but obviously they didn't consider him even a living creature, a sentient creature, because they completely avoided any of that guy, any of what he wanted, and just did whatever the hell they wanted with the body because they see him as just a machine.
Yeah.
So it's I don't know. It's sad. A part of me sees why they did it, because like they don't see him as a synthezoid. They see him as a robot. So to them, it's okay to do this. The stone never brought about higher intelligence or anything like that. It just was a stone.
Yeah. Okay.
Also, logically, they've had his body for 5 years, so they've had a lot of time to study it and, be working on it and tearing it apart, because the Vision never blipped away, but the Scarlet Witch did. So, some of the stuff they're doing in Sword in terms of the technology they're working on, stuff like that, maybe some of that, or maybe they were trying to, jumpstart Vision or something like that, and maybe that has something to do with, why he is resistant to Wanda's powers. I don't know, but yeah, it does seem that, if not Sword entirely, I think certainly elements of Sword are a bit sketchy. I'm kind of hoping, like with you, Jeff, when you were saying, you were hoping they'd be a force for good, because, we've gone down the road before, right? Of this global protection organization turns out it's rotten to the core. Oh no, it might be different this time if it wasn't, the insidious Hydra, coming in and taking over, and it was just, a bunch of middle-aged white guys who were frightened, cutting corners in order to do these things. And honestly, if you go back to the first Avengers movie, what was S.H.I.E.L.D. doing in that? They were using the Hydra tech to create weapons that they would use for defending the Earth. So, precedent does exist for this.
Yeah, that is true. That's a really great point right there. Okay, so we'll stay tuned to see what the hell Sword is up to. Let's hope that it, yeah, because now that the professor sort of said it, they basically had the Vision's body for 5 years studying it, maybe creating weapons from it, and that sort of thing. Yeah, that'll be interesting to see. I feel like that's going to have rippling effects moving forward because I do feel like Sword is going to be a presence in the MCU. You know, moving on, beyond WandaVision. So we're going to get to Wanda in a moment, but just a couple little teeny tiny tidbits. I loved Darcy and Jimmy Woo together. I loved Darcy fangirling over Monica. Amazing. And the reveal of the 70s threads. So this was a big plot point that was dropped because the idea, the concept that was sort of theorized by our sort of group of Scoobies was that, okay, this is all an illusion because we've seen Wanda and we've seen what she does and they're kind of illusions and this and that or the other, but they figure out that she's actually, in essence, rewriting reality because she's, Monica had gone into the Hex, the Maximoff anomaly, with a bulletproof vest on. And as the sitcom sort of like around her was changing, from 60s to 70s, her threads changed. And her outfit was made of Kevlar. So it seems as if it isn't just, an illusion. Wanda is literally rewriting the fabric of that town, which is an important thing to know, and especially because that revelation was buttoned with, I can't remember the exact line, but to sort of paraphrase it is, this is more power than we've ever seen the Scarlet Witch do point blank in the period, which could lead us, the viewers, to believe that maybe somebody is helping her out, even though maybe Wanda doesn't know that someone's helping her out. So I'll leave that point there. Was there anything that I just said that anybody wants to discuss before we move into Wanda making a big point?
Speaking as a Scooby, I have to stand up against your gross calumny. 2 episodes ago, when Geraldine was kicked out of the Hex, I said
yes,
her
yes,
clothes
yes.
had changed back.
Wait,
So I said back then, obviously her reality manipulating powers are actually manipulating reality, and it persists even outside of the Hex.
yes, and also I wanted to give you props on another point, Professor, because it was mentioned in the episode, and I was like, this was a major point the Professor made on the podcast. You referenced in our previous podcast that clearly Wanda wasn't trying to hurt quote-unquote Geraldine, aka Monica, because she was blasted through 4 walls, and 4 walls, 3 literal walls, and then the 4th wall being the Hex wall, and she wasn't hurt. And Monica actually said that in the episode to Hayward, and I was like, oh, look at that. The Professor was brilliant. You get a hat tip for that.
Thank you. I try to remain humble, but God knows it's not easy.
Okay, good. Priscilla, what about you? Anything else to add with anything that I've said before we get into Wanda's face-off?
I still think that she's got control of the stones and that she's
Okay, I like it.
reality stone.
I like it. Okay, I like it. Okay.
Well, and again, getting back to Endgame, one thing that was said is that reality can't exist without the stone. So even though Thanos destroyed them, they would eventually reconstitute in some way. So it is possible.
I like it. I'm here for it all. Oh, God. Okay, so this is the standoff. This is one of the most badass moments I have ever seen in the MCU, I would say. This was hella badass. This would be in the top 5, I would say. Okay, so Monica's like, all right, so, but what if we, because clearly she's rewriting stuff to fit the time period, but what if we send something in? Because remember, they also saw the drone and it changed into a toy and that sort of thing. She's like, what if we sent something period appropriate that wouldn't necessarily have to be changed? You know, what does that mean? And like, what's going to happen? Should we test it out? And so they send in it's a drone, I guess, but it's like an 80s drone. And it's got, I guess, a speaker on it because she's trying to speak to Wanda. The dog sort of senses it first. He scurries outside, and then Wanda steps outside. And Monica does her best, but Wanda doesn't really respond. Well, she does respond by her eyes turned red, but that's about it. She doesn't really. She makes sure that the drone is out of frame and this, that, or the other, so it's not seen on the actual show. And since Monica doesn't get her to react, Hayward takes controls away from Monica and is going to blast her with something. The camera cuts out. There's a breach, and we see Wanda step out of the hex with the drone, tosses it over, and in essence is like, leave me alone. This is your last warning. I don't want y'all to fuck with me, and I don't want to fuck with y'all. So leave me alone. And Monica tries to reach out because Hayward clearly is getting nowhere with his bravado. And she's like, you trusted me. You allowed me to help you give birth to your kids. You know that I'm on the up and up. Why are you doing this to these people? And in essence, Wanda's like, what can you give me? Like, I have everything that I want right now, in essence. I mean, like, there's this whole thing. They're like they're aiming guns at her, and she hexes them into aiming them at Hayward. I mean, it is an extravaganza of Wanda Maximoff giving zero fucks, and it was spectacular for Elizabeth Olsen. Priscilla, what did you think of the Maximoff standoff?
Holy shit. I was like, this guy does not know what the fuck he is doing. Why would you go with a little toy gun against an Avenger? Like, do you really think your little BB gun is gonna do anything against that behemoth? That is nothing. It's like going level 1 against somebody that's level 100. That's not gonna do shit. They're gonna laugh at you, which is basically what she did when she went in there. When she went outside and pointed all his guns back at him. She's like, nope, I'm not gonna listen to you. Why would I listen to you? But she did listen to Monica, which is probably why she didn't kill him in the first place. But my God, a part of like, there's so many theories going around though. I was interested in this theory that I heard that somebody was like, maybe that's not the real Scarlet Witch.
I did
But I'm
read
like,
that online. Some people are thinking that the Scarlet Witch that came out and talked to them wasn't the real Scarlet Witch. That it could be, if there is a big bad that is controlling everything and that's in essence manipulating Wanda into doing what they want. Some people think that that might have been the person that walked out. The one thing that kind of it ruins that moment for me if it's not Wanda, because I feel like this is a moment of power that Wanda is showcasing her power, and it's showcasing in essence, this was her Disney Princess I Want song. Not done in song, but she's telling us, I have everything that I want. I have everything that I need. You all can't do anything for me. Leave me in my bubble. I will be peaceful to y'all if you are peaceful to me. And I think as a moment, Wanda Maximoff needed that moment. So I hope it isn't someone else that came out pretending to be Wanda. You know?
me too. Like the way you phrased it right then and there, like it hit that she just showed so much authority, and a part of me, like, when I saw it, I was like, the accent is back, and
Yes.
her her she doesn't feel like she's cowering the way is in the TV show. With everything, she just looks like she's scared her bubble's gonna break and it's gonna burst. But in this case, she's like, no, no one's gonna break my bubble but me. And I don't want it to break right now, so you guys are just gonna have to deal with it and get the fuck out of here right now.
Exactly. And if you are painting Wanda with the brush stroke that she's a villain, this would be the moment that sort of justifies your idea that, okay, she is the big bad. I feel like all of this, because they keep on feeding, all of our brains in with the fact that it's Wanda's in charge, Wanda's the villain, Wanda's this, you're doing this, Wanda. I'm of the believer that she is not necessarily the big bad. She might be doing some bad things, but she isn't necessarily the big bad. But if you do think she is the big bad, I think that scene was proof enough that Wanda is fully in control, per se. Professor, what about you? Your thoughts on Wanda Maximoff, Diva?
Not only because of what she did with the guns, but also just the way she was carrying herself, gave me very Magneto vibes. And I've always said I would love, closing shot of this is just someone, if the mutants are brought back, is, seeing Michael Fassbender just sitting at a table, suddenly looking up and pulling a fork towards his hand or something like that. But yeah, it was, very strong. And like, I agree with you. I've said before, I want Elizabeth Olsen to be the big bad just because I don't want a strong female character to be manipulated. I would rather have her be bad for her own sake than be manipulated into it. And again, it could be, as I say, that maybe it's that she is doing this. And I do honestly believe she's doing this of her own volition. Out of grief now, there is the possibility there is someone giving her little pushes, little tweaks, pushing her towards a certain goal, trying to take advantage of her, using all of this power for some malign end. But I do believe her desire to have this life, to get her version of the happy ending, after all the grief and tragedy that she's gone through. I think that makes a lot of sense. And I would hope that if we find out that it is, and again, we don't know, like we only saw selected highlights of what she saw when she attacked Sword, right? So it could be that, maybe she found that they were turning him into a weapon or something like that. And, acting director douchebag just didn't share that little bit of information. So, there could be other motivations there that we haven't seen. But yeah, I really liked it. It definitely giving me, and also that Magneto sense of, look, we can't coexist. You guys stay out here. I'll be in here. Don't mess with me or I will kill you. It was great. It was like super strong and a great acting performance. And as Priscilla mentioned, dropping back into the voice, going back to her original costume. I was watching carefully when we cut back to the sitcom because she was wearing a locket in the Scarlet Witch costume. She wasn't wearing the locket when she went back in. I was thinking that might be a connection point. Now I have to go back and watch it and see whether she was wearing her wedding ring when she stepped out. But no, it was just, what a great, strong scene. But I also do kind of agree with you, Jeff, that it seems like they're being so overt about, it's the Scarlet Witch, it's the Scarlet Witch, it's the Scarlet Witch. Not by that name, but it's Wanda, it's Wanda, it's Wanda. That does make you think that, the laws of basic storytelling suggest that it can't be that simple. Boy, I kind of hope it is. I hope it's that she is doing all of this, and maybe the redemption is maybe Agnes or Vision is able to break through and make her realize that what she's doing is wrong, and she has to voluntarily give it up.
Very interesting. I will say we had a tiny little moment. It was teeny tiny, but as we say with everything Marvel, teeny tiny moments could mean something big. The fact that Hayward was like, she doesn't have a funny name, she doesn't have a funny nickname. No, she's just Wanda. Could it be that by the end of WandaVision, she'll be the Scarlet Witch?
Oh, I think obviously.
Okay. All right.
I'll put that right upside the prediction that I made last week, which we're going to be talking about shortly.
Okay. All right. I like it.
I think for sure, too.
Okay. I enjoy all of this. So let's talk about the commercial for the week. It's pretty simple. It's very straightforward. For those out there that maybe wouldn't have recognized it as much, without the sort of memory triggering type of thing. They did reference it earlier in the episode. They mentioned Lagos and the destruction that the Scarlet Witch did in Captain America Civil War. But it was Lagos paper towels. Very straightforward. I mean, even the line, the what do you call it? The tagline of the commercial was a bit on the nose. So for when you make a mess that you didn't mean or something like that. But the thing that I noticed the most out of this, and I don't know if anybody else noticed this, and I did not do a whole Professor X, frame by frame type of situation, but I did notice this. The wife in the commercial, the female in the commercial, she looked a little bit under distress in the first two scenes of the commercial. Like she looked very emotional, like as if she was either on the verge of tears or like as if she had been crying. And I don't know if that was an acting choice by the woman that's playing the commercial lead, but it was just something that I noticed, and I found it almost disturbing and distressing. I don't know if either of you noticed that, but I noticed in the first two moments of the commercial, like when she's introduced and like the spill and like the second spill that she cleans, like there's just something in her face where she looked emotional. And that just seemed a little off for in essence, a paper towel commercial, Did anyone else notice that, or was that just me?
I didn't notice that, but what I did notice was that Lagos, the red, like reminds me of another stone.
Oh.
Like, and all of the commercials seem to be relegated to a different like stone that we've seen before already, with like the blue like cube being like the soap bottle and the soap that they were talking about, and the time stone with the watch. And which one was the first commercial?
The toaster?
The toaster being the red jewel. The red jewel.
Yeah, that's interesting. All right, that's fascinating. Okay, Professor, what about you? Did you notice anything with the commercial?
Not really, no. I didn't get the Lagos reference until afterwards, even though they did drop that reminder in during the briefing scene. But yeah, and again, it's what purpose are the commercials serving? Is it again, is she working through her sense of guilt, her sense of loss? I'm starting, I almost hate to admit it, to come around to Priscilla's infinity gems or infinity stones theory, because you do have, and we noticed the time thing, and also I'm sort of trying to work out how the various stones might work, because we've seen time manipulation go on, obviously. We've seen, Vision's powers, seemingly, to wake up Norm in that way could be seen as a manifestation of the Mind Stone. Intriguing. And of course, if she were in some way, recreating or being present at the rebirth of the Infinity Stones, that's the sort of thing that would attract a lot of dangerous people.
Yeah. Very true. Very true. Okay, so we're not going to talk about the very end just yet, but we're going to talk about everything that led up to the very end, because a lot happened there. So one of the themes about this episode that was interesting, because they titled this episode On a Very Special Episode, ... And in essence, the sitcom-y kind of trope that they did play around in this episode was, the theme of sort of like a very special episode of like an 80s television show, like an 80s sitcom. The episode dealt with death in a very interesting way. And that's something that we've seen on sitcoms, like the kids learning about, a pet dying or maybe a family member and that type of thing, they're learning how to cope with death. Death was brought up a lot in this episode, and it was interesting how it was brought up. I know we sort of like lightly touched on it earlier, but the fact that Wanda specifically told her kids, I can't bring someone back from the dead. She didn't necessarily use it in those terms because Agnes was there, but in essence, that's what she's saying. I don't have the power to do that. I like that. I feel like it's an important bit of information because a lot of people are questioning a lot of stuff, especially with Vision and how he was revived. Vision wasn't necessarily a living, breathing thing. So I would assume that Vision kind of could potentially be a little wrinkle in that, idea that Wanda can't bring things back from the dead because he wasn't necessarily a human. But that was an interesting point that was made. And then later on, we have the confrontation that was had. So Vision has been noticing stuff. He, in essence, awakened Norm's true personality. And after experiencing all this stuff and experiencing the sitcom beats and recognizing the sitcom beats, noticing that Agnes all of a sudden showed up, when, in essence, Wanda cued her up. And then later on, Agnes once again showed up when she was queued up based off of the situation, and Vision predicted that. He starts questioning Wanda. And, what are you doing? What's going on? You, in essence, have all these people under control. What's the Maximoff anomaly? And Wanda, in essence, to end the argument, rolls the credits. I will say a friend of mine on Facebook was like, this is how I'm going to be ending all of the arguments that I have. He's just going to roll the credits. It was spectacular. So the credits roll. The credits, I don't know if anyone noticed, but when they leave the room, the credits glitch. I thought that was kind of interesting. And the Wanda and Vision get into it. There is a standoff. Vision says he doesn't remember his life before Westview. He accuses Wanda of, in essence, being in control of everybody. Where are the children? Why are there no children here? You're in control of everyone here in Westview. And Wanda denies it. She says that she's not in control of everybody. She's this, that, or the other. She makes a couple of interesting points. The first one is that she states that she doesn't even remember how all of this started. And I take that at face value. I believe her when she says that. There is a moment when the doorbell rings, and Wanda's like, I didn't do that. And she's like, you don't believe me, but I didn't do that. I actually believe Wanda at that point as well, because I have my own theory about stuff. So we're going to pause it right here. We're going to do a whole pause, like Wanda pauses stuff, because what happens with the door is going to lead into a very different conversation. So let's talk about the argument. Wow, is all I'm going to say. Professor, what did you think of Wanda and Vision going at it? What did you think of how Wanda tried to avoid the argument by rolling the credits? What did you think of all of Vision's observations? Because even Vision was like, so what are you going to do? We're going to go to bed and then you're going to reset everything and this, that, or the other. Because he was very astute as to what was going on and his perception of Wanda's control of the situation. And then there was also a brief moment in the fight where Vision was like, oh, you can't control me. And Wanda was like, oh, is that what you think?
Yeah, that was interesting. And just had that element of malevolence there. I did love the idea that, rolling the, not just rolling the credits, but bringing up the theme song and the studio audience and everything like that. And, previously, that's how, Wanda would have just edited something and ended it. It could be an indication that she doesn't have the same level of control, at least not over Vision, as she had in the past. The fact that he is able to break free and say, no, we are going to continue this even after the credits roll, which I thought was interesting. Him bringing out, making overt, his suspicions, his, the sense that, because we really haven't gotten that too much of his curiosity about, well, what was my life before that? Like you, I agree that I think her saying that, I didn't create this, I found it, was suggestive, because it does suggest that maybe someone set this up for her to find, or that, her unconscious is battling with her conscious mind. And perhaps it's her unconscious that is doing all the nasty things. And her conscious mind is just, going along for the ride of, living this sitcom life. I don't know. There's so many possibilities, but yeah, no, I do agree. It was a beautifully acted and well written scene because you really understood the anguish that Vision is going through. With not having a sense of who he is, just being, stuck as much as anyone else. Now maybe he is jumping to conclusions about who the she is. I don't know. It is interesting. There was something that happened there that I thought was worth mentioning, but I can't remember what it was right now.
I do agree
Yeah.
with.
Anyway.
Well, I agree with you. I thought the allegations were very interesting. The fact that Vision really was collecting data throughout the entire episode and sort of trying to put things together and trying to figure it out. I thought Wanda, for the most part, I would say this is the episode where Wanda was losing control of the sitcom world. I would say it seemed as if she was what would be the proper term? She just wasn't as she was. I don't know if frazzled would be the right term.
Actually, I think frazzled is not bad. I think there's a sense and we mentioned it before, like using her powers in front of Agnes and referring to her powers in front of Agnes when she was talking with the kids and all of that. It shows someone who either is being stretched to breaking point, like maybe this is taking more out of her than she wants to admit, or there's a malign force acting on her, or it's just that perhaps on some level she's realizing the enormity of what she's doing, that she knows that if she is the one responsible, she knows that what she's doing is wrong. Mm-hmm. And, she can't quite face that in herself. I do, as I keep coming back to this, but I hope it's her doing all of this out of grief. I do kind of hope it's not someone manipulating her. Although obviously if someone's manipulating her, it makes her redemption arc easier. But I hope this is her doing it.
Well, I mean, both can be true, I think. I mean, she's clearly grieving, and this is her way of coping with that grief. But she can also still be manipulated. Someone's manipulating her grief, which at the end of the day, I would not want to be that person because Wanda's going to be hella pissed. Yeah. Priscilla, what about you? Your thoughts on everything with the argument?
Man, the whole roll the credits when you're mad is a great power to have. Just sorry to see it didn't work, but it was a good power. It was a good little card to have to play. But man, that fight was dramatic and intense and tragic for Wanda because she looked all small and afraid and kind of like a little bit weak at the end when she's just kind of like, no, it's not me. Like, I didn't do that. I swear I didn't do that. Like, it just she just it just looks like she feels like she's a pawn in this game. Like it's somebody else that's been playing with her powers here.
Okay. All right. I can dig it. I love this moment. It was so good. Like, it was such a great moment in the series. I mean, yeah, it was fantastic. Speaking of another moment that maybe we did not see coming, but the professor might have. All right, so there's a ding-dong at the door. And this was coming after the fact that that Wanda was denying being in control of everything. That she denied that she did the doorbell ring. That she controlled that. She was like, it wasn't me. She said, I didn't do it. She goes to the door. She opens it, and shock look on her face. Darcy, in the real world, or in the world outside of Westview, notices it on the screen, and she sits down and watches. We see the camera pan out. We see a familiar hair color. Darcy recognizes the familiar hair color. And then we see a man that presents himself to be Pietro. And Darcy says what we're all thinking. She recast Pietro. But it isn't just a recast of Pietro, because it's fascinating. So earlier in the episode, we did have a moment where the twins were like, do you have a brother? And she's like, Yes, but he's far away. And, it makes me sad sometimes. So she didn't fully break like she did when Ultron was mentioned in an earlier episode. But we did have a moment of a recognition of Pietro in the actual sitcom. So the person that we have playing Pietro is not the gentleman that played him originally in the MCU. It is not Aaron Taylor Johnson. It is
I
Evan
was about to be
Peters.
like, what was his name? Aaron something?
Yes, it was not Aaron Taylor Johnson. It was Evan Peters, who famously played Pietro Maximoff, aka Quicksilver, in the Fox X-Men franchise. Dun dun dun. And he's like, don't you want to give your brother a hug or something like that? And then he tells Vision in a very sitcom kind of way, who's the popsicle and that sort of thing. And this is where the episode ends. And then this is it. It was a shock. I will say for those out there listening, if you are not watching the episode at least the day of and completely avoiding social media, you will not be able to not learn of some of the twists and turns on WandaVision, because basically everything WandaVision is trending on Twitter the day of the episode. Evan Peters was trending, Monica, Wanda, Paul Bettany, like the actors' names, the character names, like the plot twists, like everything trends on Twitter. So I don't really feel bad for the people that are trying to binge all of this in one go, because that's your own personal choice. And if you're going to do that, I feel like you're legitimately going to get spoiled by everything. I will also say Age of Ultron was also trending again for like the third straight week this past weekend. It was also the thing that was recommended at the end of this episode, for me at least, on Disney+. So I guess, people are either talking about it or rewatching it after they watch WandaVision. So let's talk about this. Pietro Maximoff is back with a brand new face, a familiar face for people that watch the X-Men movies, familiar face for anybody that watches American Horror Story. It's Evan Peters. What does this mean? There are a lot of people theorizing about a whole bunch of stuff. I won't even mention it because that might be what some of y'all are theorizing. So I'll start off with the professor, just because he did say Pietro was coming. We didn't disagree with you, but you were the first one that sort of said it aloud. So, Professor, Pietro.
Yeah, I said Pietro will be back. I did not predict which one because I did not see that coming. It took me totally by surprise because I was, absolutely, as soon as I heard the doorbell, I was, well, it's going to be Pietro, because again, they mentioned him in the episode. And interestingly, when Wanda referred to her mother in the past, she, in previous episodes, she said her mother was dead. In this one, she didn't say Pietro was dead. She said he's far away, which does sort of hold out the possibility that maybe she plucked a Pietro from the multiverse or something like that. Or maybe this is just a guy who happened to be in the community that we haven't seen so far. So, I mean, I was, and immediately I'm starting to think of, okay, what does all this mean? We don't know. It's pointless to speculate without data. I did love the fact that he chose to play the character as this big Goomba type character and who's the popsicle, which is really interesting because when you think about it, this is her brother and he doesn't know that she's married, let alone, and again, it's sort of, is straining the sitcom trope a little bit. In that respect, which I think might lead to the idea that, he's not, again, and the surprise on her face, unless, as I said before, it is her unconscious doing all of this. Clearly, she did not create him. She could have unconsciously pulled him in from the multiverse or unconsciously created him, or there is another force at play who is trying to push her towards something. And maybe in some crazy way, if you want to argue for, Agnes being a benevolent force, maybe they are trying to get her to come to grips. Like right now, she's clearly in denial. She's, in terms of Dabda, she hasn't gotten through, denial, bringing Vision back, having the life they didn't have. We saw some anger. Dabda? Bargaining, depression. and acceptance. So, we could be building towards that. And maybe the whole point of it is to, keep pushing her to reconcile with her loss in this way. Maybe it's all a form of therapy for her. Which would be an interesting take. But yeah, so as I say, not surprised to see Quicksilver. Was very surprised to see that Quicksilver. Have no idea what it means going forward. Is this Pietro Maximoff with Quicksilver's powers? Is he just a Pietro Maximoff? Does this open up the the gateway to the other X-Men? Will that become part of canon on another multiverse? I just don't know. It was a great moment, and I'm glad it didn't get spoiled for me on social media.
Priscilla, what about you? Your thoughts on Pietro?
I don't think that's Pietro. I still
Ooh.
think like she's got influence on the stones. I think somebody wants
Oh no.
that power over those stones. I think somebody wants control over that. I think that somebody is a she, or that somebody is either Dottie or some, I don't know, but I think they're just using this Pietro as a puppet or something to control Wanda. I don't think he's real.
All right. So we saw a fake person on the TV. I can dig it. I also don't think he's real as well. And my whole thing is, so by the end of the episode, Vision is questioning everything. And clearly, if we're going to go with the word frazzled, Wanda is frazzled. And she is not able to explain her way in any type of way to get Vision to understand that she is not in control, that she's not she isn't in control, that she is not controlling everything, and that she's not in essence behind everything. The line that was important was, I don't even know how all this started. The other line that was important was that I didn't do that. And I think whomever is really in charge or is manipulating Wanda into accepting this blissful prison, maybe, is the person that maybe sent Pietro to sort of restore balance and order, in essence. Pietro showing up, Pietro being recasted, both things are sitcom tropes. I mean, the recasted family member we've seen on sitcoms, and we're just supposed to accept it. The long-lost family member showing up, ready to sort of spice things up in the dynamic of a sitcom we've seen many times before. So they are playing with sitcom tropes, but they're also, playing with whatever it is that Wanda is doing. The other lines that were interesting in the episode was the fact that, I don't remember if it was this episode because I did rewatch an episode, but the fact that we've heard Wanda say in the past, in essence, we can't leave here. This is our home, and the fact that she also, there's just a lot of inferences from Wanda that she can't, this is her dominion and they can't leave. What's outside of Westview you don't want to know, all this type of stuff. It's just fascinating how it seems as if Wanda is stuck there. And maybe it's the concept of she is imprisoned there for whatever reason, but it's a prison of her own construct. So she does have control over some of it, but at the end of the day, someone else is in charge. And the line that they said outside of the Hex was, and props to Darcy for calling it the Hex. It just, it flows with Scarlet Witch and the comics and that sort of thing. But the line that they said out of it, and just stuck with me throughout this entire episode was that Wanda doesn't have that much power. How does she have that much power? She's never exhibited that much power. So the idea that powers are being combined to continue that is something that I'm also thinking about. I do like Priscilla's theory about the Infinity Stone. So if she has absorbed all of the stones, that would make sense as to why she has so much more power than she usually does. But if we are also going to think of the concept of someone else being in charge, someone else, trying to manipulate, then their combined power would also increase Wanda's power as well. Whether it's Agnes somehow as whether it's a forced or a willing ally to whomever it is, I don't know. There is a theory online that Pietro is a Westview resident, maybe Jimmy's witness protection program person. So I don't know if they're going to do that immediately, if that is the case, because, so many people are speculating about, does this mean, the Fox movies are canon? I don't think this means that the Fox movies are canon. I think it's just going to be an entire trolling for the people that think that. That's what I think. He could also be the big bad, though. Let's be real. Like, if the big bad sensed that Wanda is figuring stuff out, the big bad is going to go in there and start stirring the pot to make sure it's stirring the way that the big bad wants it to stir. There is that as well.
Yeah, and I think any of those possibilities are entirely valid. We just don't know enough. All we know is that a different actor has shown up playing this character, and it could mean a lot of different things. I do like the idea that, he's a recast, but if he was recast, he'd have to be someone that they've never seen before in the community, and there's not that many people in the community. So that's a little iffy. Also, something interesting, with the idea that, Wanda taking over the town and Vision mentioning there's no children. So again, maybe when Wanda took over the town, she made sure there were no children there to be affected by it. It's so many questions being raised. And, we said before we started recording, kudos to Marvel for, absolutely monopolizing the pop culture conversation going on right now. Like, we don't have movies to talk about, the Super Bowl's over. And, if it wasn't for, every week just wondering what the hell does all of this mean for WandaVision, we'd all be going mad or madder.
Yes, very true. We have spent about an hour and 40 minutes talking about a 35-minute show. So it's a show that's sparking conversation. Priscilla, what were you about to say?
Oh, I was just going to say that, isn't it weird that this Quicksilver doesn't dress like the Quicksilver of the Fox movies, though? He dresses like the Quicksilver of the Avengers. His hair is cut like the Quicksilver of the Avengers.
True. Yes, I noticed that as well. I noticed the hair color. The hair color is also the hair color of the MCU Quicksilver versus the Fox one.
But that would make sense. If she is recasting, she would recast to look like, as much as possible. But he doesn't sound anything like the, her Pietro, which makes sense because, in this reality, he would be as American as the rest of them. So many questions being raised. Damn you people.
Yeah. I will say, and I'm just going to do it as, I don't want to even call it a bold prediction, but I'm just going to say it, that he's not going to open the door to the Fox universe. He's not going to do that. No. For all those out there that think we're going to be seeing Hugh Jackman and everybody else sort of showing up. It's not to say that they couldn't do that, at another point if they want to open the door to the multiverse, but I don't think this is Fox's Quicksilver plucked from the multiverse. I'm just going to say that. That's just my opinion. I could be totally
One thing
wrong.
about that, if they did want to reintroduce the X-Men, because if she was going to, manipulate reality or awaken the mutants, that would allow you to take the sort of, the young mutants, the Fassbender, McAvoy, and stuff like that, and allow them to play those characters in a contemporary setting, because she would essentially be resetting the clock on them.
True.
because I mentioned, I was hoping to like see, Michael Fassbender at the end, but I thought, well, shouldn't it be Ian McKellen, because of the time frame that we're in? But no, I mean, hey, when you're manipulating reality to the extent that she is, and if she does in fact have access to the time stone, a lot of cards are on the table.
Very true. Very true. All right, so before we head into the MVP, was there anything that I missed? Teeny tiny little moment. Anything that either of you would like to discuss before we head into the MVP?
We've been talking a lot about how, obviously this is inspired to some extent or another by the House of M comics. I just wanted to mention another comic series that I think has parallels here. It's the Vision series, which probably about 4 or 5 years ago, I want to say. But in it, Vision creates a reality for himself. Now, he doesn't do it quite to this extent. He just, builds a synthezoid family, including a synthezoid dog named Sparky, and, moves to a house in the suburbs and tries to have the ideal, American suburban life. With obvious problems intervening. But, this idea of trying to, create a blissful, utopian almost TV. And indeed, the Vision, the characters that they have, the only one of them that survives is his daughter, Viv. And again, that's, she's a young Avengers. When we talked about the possibility that if they are creating the young Avengers, there is a possibility with that. But I think, again, if you're looking for comic book source material that I think the people definitely read before doing this, that's one to look at.
Very interesting. I like that. All right, so now it is time for the MVP, the most valuable player. Blah, blah. Now it's time for the MVP, the most valuable player. Say which character impressed you throughout the episode and why. Once a character has been chosen, they cannot be selected again, so choose wisely. MVP time. There are a lot of really great choices. We'll start off with Priscilla. Who's your MVP and why?
My MVP is going to be the Scarlet Witch because, my God, she went from being this domestic wife who was just kooky and there for her babies and trying to get them to go to sleep to this powerhouse woman who could control guns to move against sword agents, and from there she went on to become this woman who was just lost and didn't know what she wanted to say to her husband to get him to understand that she really isn't controlling the situation at hand and to get him to believe her. Like, she went through so many different characters as one character. It's an amazing thing, especially coming from Elizabeth Olsen, the person who just had like one role in the Avengers, and it was like 20 minutes at most, all put together. It's amazing.
I like it. Great choice. Professor, what about you? Who's your MVP?
Well, I want to show some love to the secondary characters, but so much as I would like to give it to Norm, who had a great scene. It was only one scene, and I think Catherine Hahn she was integral. She had 3 very important scenes. That first really unsettling scene, really set the tone for it. And then later on, we've talked a lot about, her not just being funny, but, the little reactions and stuff like that, her sense of awareness. I think, the realization that she is so aware of what is going on and possibly manipulating things either for good or malign purposes, I don't know. But she's just playing it so well. And she's just such a delight every time she's on screen that I'm going to have to give it to Agnes.
Fantastic choice. There were a lot of really great choices in this episode. I think everybody had their moment. It just it depends on how you want to validate who your MVP is. I got to give it to Vision. just because Paul Bettany was spectacular throughout the entire episode. Like, we've seen him be awesome with the comedic aspects of the sitcom world, but in this one, where, you know, it turned Twilight Zone-y, David Lynchian, Twin Peaks-ish, you know, with Vision starting to grab puzzle pieces, maybe not necessarily knowing how to place them together, sort of like how the professor said, you know, looking at, you know, the backside of the puzzle versus the actual image, but grabbing the puzzle pieces and trying to place them together was just brilliant. I mean, Paul Bettany was spectacular. The confrontation was everything. Vision being exasperated, you know, just wondering what the hell is going on, was brilliantly played by Paul Bettany. He was just freaking spectacular. I love this episode. It was so good. That's why I've seen it way too many times. So now it is time to rate the episode. How would you rate this episode on a scale of 1 to 10 televisions? The point system is allowed, and if you found the episode exceptional, deserving of more than a 10, you may grant it the coveted golden television. Professor, where do you stand? How do you rate this episode?
I'm tempted to give it a 10 out of 10, but then I remember the Elizabeth Olsen scene where she's facing down Sword, and boy, it was just so good that it pushes it up to golden television for me.
Very nice. We've got a golden television. Priscilla, what about you?
I don't think I'm going to give it a golden television, but I am going to give it a 10. I'm going to give it a 10. I feel like it was a good episode, deserving of its praise. I think it was perfect for how confusing it was to both the Scarlet Witch trying to figure out how to keep her world together and still be the best mom that she could be to her kids and just keep this bubble without bursting. Like, I think it was a great episode, so 10.
All right, we've got a golden and we've got a 10, and I agree with one of you, and that person is the professor. I'm giving it a golden television. It was spectacular from beginning to end. Everything in the sitcom world, everything outside of the sitcom world, the cracks in the sitcom foundation that were so evident that even Vision was looking at them. He did have 20/20 vision to notice the cracks. He might not know where the cracks are going, but he did notice the cracks, and it was just fantastic. From the opening weirdness of Agnes wanting to do the takeover to Pietro at the end, and Darcy being like, she recasted him. Like, it was just brilliant. And I want to sort of like just to pick up the bookmark that I left earlier. So the idea of Wanda not being able to bring back the dead, which was so beaten into our heads throughout the entire episode, makes me believe that clearly she did not bring Pietro back from the dead. Even if he's recasted, like she didn't bring him back from the dead. So there are a lot of people that are wondering, does this mean that, you know, he was in essence brought back from the dead, although recasted and that sort of thing? So I wanted to add that in. I feel like that conversation was important because of what we saw at the end. So yes, Golden TV from me. And on that note, join us next time for a brand new installment of the Avengers Initiative, WandaVision. Here's our announcer to remind you on how you can interact with us.
Follow Poppy Chulo Radio on social media. We are on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, at Poppy Chulo Radio. Do you have any questions, suggestions, comments, or concerns? Email us via contact@poppychuloradio.com. Are you interested in joining the Poppy Chulo Radio team as an on-air personality? Email talent@poppychuloradio.com. Binge listen to your favorite Poppy Chulo Radio programs by visiting poppychuloradio.com/archives. You can also download tonight's broadcast and the rest of the series through Apple Podcasts and Google Play. Just search for The Avengers Initiative, WandaVision, and subscribe.
Thanks, announcer. My co-hosts, please wish the listeners A good night, starting off with Priscilla.
Roll the credits.
Perfect. And the professor.
You can roll the credits. I'm going to keep talking because we've just found out that doesn't work.
That is very true. Thanks for tuning in. Download new episodes of the Avengers Initiative WandaVision every Tuesday via Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and the Papi Chulo Radio archives. Good night.